Girl sleeps without underwear for the first time. When she falls asleep, the covers are all pulled back at once, exposing her legs. In a trance, the girl is about to get up to check. A large hand grabs the girl by her hair and pins her to the bed. He was the girl's real father. The girl said, "What was wrong?" The father didn't answer. He looked up and down Mary's body, a look of greed and desire. He lowered his head again to stare at his daughter. "My daughter has grown up to be a big girl." The poor girl was terrified, her body trembling slightly. The father loosened his daughter's hair a little. He touched her face, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. While the girl thought something was going to happen, the father turned and left, leaving his daughter alone, unable to speak for a long time. The next morning, the mother was cooking. Mary sat dumbly by inside. She wondered, should I tell my mother about last night? Her sister came downstairs. Her brother came to the table. But the girl's father sat down happily. It was as if nothing had happened last night. Mary remembered how horrible her father had looked last night, but now he was back to his normal self. Mary got up and left. The family was puzzled. The mother slammed the casserole on the table. This made them even more confused. The mother twitched and gulped down food. It was as if she hadn't eaten in days. These bizarre movements put the family in a state of fear. The brother spat out the food and said it was too salty. The mother grabbed the leek box and shoved it into her mouth like a madman. What is happening to this family? Ever since they moved into the cottage, the family's life has been getting weirder by the day. Neighbors have created bizarre statues in their yard. Skinless animals appear out of nowhere in the morning, and a father wanders around in the middle of the night. The woman is eating more and more badly. She hands the food to her son, but the son refuses to eat. He looks to his father. The father says, "If he doesn't want to eat, don't eat." The woman's eyes become extremely cold. She spills the food on the table. Then she pushes the plate away. The children shudder in fear. The woman becomes more frantic. She shouts in a frenzy of agitation, "Little bastard, don't you know how to be grateful?" She looks fiercely at her son. The son and the children are so frightened that they cry out. They had no idea this was just the beginning of their nightmare. The girl is bathing in 100-degree hot water. She doesn't even know it. Turning off the water valve and wiping the mist off the glass. Her twin sister startles her. The sister instantly puts her face up to hers. It was just a joke. The two return to the bedroom. The girl tells Mary about her father coming to her room last night. Mary doesn't believe her. At the same time, her father opens the door and comes in. The two of them rush to hide. The father had heard everything they had just said. Not only does he start questioning his daughter, reaching into his pen and pulling out a wallpaper knife, he slashes out a whole blade and approaches the two. Mary pushes him away just in time. They run as fast as they can. The father suddenly appears in front of them, grabbing Mary by the hair. He stares at them for a moment. Then he throws Mary a few meters away. Mary falls hard on the stairs. She faints and looks at Mary and then at her father. She rolls and runs as fast as she can. As she runs, she looks back. Her father doesn't come after her. He walks to the storage room. He grabs a large hammer and walks out. At the same time, Mary wakes up. She has lost sight of her sister and father, so she starts to look. Suddenly, she feels someone behind her. Slowly, she turns her head and looks. Her father raises his hammer and hits her hard. A shout saves Mary. She grabs the stainless steel pan, hitting her father on the head once. No harm done. The father raises his hand and smashes the hammer into the door. And the next thing you know, the same sound as her father came from downstairs. It was the father himself. A man drops the hammer and walks back into the room. The exact same man comes up from downstairs with a shocked look on his face. He sees his daughters hiding and shivering. His foot hits the hammer. He sees a big hole in the door of the room. He asks if they had fought, but the two dare not answer any of their father's questions. At that moment, the youngest brother comes out, while the sisters tell him to run. A woman's hand appears and picks up the hammer. The brother sees it. The man turns his head and looks at his wife in a strange way. The woman does not make a sound. Slowly she walks towards him. She raises her head and suddenly attacks. The second and third hammers all fall short. The family is terrified. The wife turns her head to the twin sisters. She raises her hammer and brings it down. The father has no time to think and holds his wife in his arms, but she pushes her away. The woman smiles strangely, looking at the family in front of her. She withdraws her smile and turns her head away. She steps over the glass and pierces her foot, before pulling it out. She enters the room without seeming to feel any pain. Suddenly, the sound of her wife's voice comes from downstairs again. The wife covers her mouth and walks upstairs in surprise. The man turns his head and looks into the room again. Who was that man? But he is still afraid of his wife. Then he opens the door to the room. There is no one inside, but the man sees the bloody hammer on the floor. The mother goes to her daughter and asks her questions. The daughter is scared to death and hides. The next day, the man calls his brother and asks him to come and deal with the matter. That afternoon, the brother, who is a religious man, arrives at the elder brother's house in time. He had told his brother about some of the things he had seen, but the elder brother had always been an atheist. It also led to a growing distance between the blood brothers. Late at night, the family decides to sleep together. In the middle of the night, the boy is awakened by urine. He doesn't disturb the family. The disobedient boy goes to the bathroom alone. At that moment, a similar figure flashes by. It's true that children are the same all over the world. The boy raises his dagger and smiles strangely. The dagger falls and stops. The boy does not kill the religious man, as if something had stopped him, and the disciple opens his eyes. And so, because of his presence, the family passes the night unharmed. The next day, the apostle knows that he cannot handle the situation. He calls the archbishop. The people rush to analyze what had happened to the family. A personalized exorcism plan is devised. This archbishop is very powerful. He has many followers. They received the archbishop that afternoon. But on the way, a single crow, a raven, rushed at the car at high speed. The windscreen was shattered. I just don't get it. Why didn't they stop? Why on earth did this lead to the end of all the religious and the bishop scenes just as they were appearing? At the same time, the man has tied his daughter to the bed by her limbs. The mother could not bear the sight of it, but there was nothing else to do. They had to wait for the bishop's congregation to arrive. Late at night, the religious returns, covered in blood and with very bad news. The archbishop's men have all been killed. The rest is up to us. Looking at his niece in bed in great distress, the apostle had to do something, but he was really timid. The last time he offended an evil spirit, his whole family had been killed. He was afraid that history would repeat itself. If he lost his brother's family again, he would regret it for the rest of his life. His brother was on his knees, pleading with him. He wanted him to do something. They must fight for once, or they would all die. The churchman lit candles and sprinkled holy water. When Mary touched the cold holy water, she felt very uncomfortable. It was cold. She didn't know what was happening. The vestments were placed on Mary's body. Mary didn't react at all, but the real ceremony had just begun. The girl was tied to the bed on all fours. She was terrified. Mary screams in pain as the disciples cracked the whip. The family's hearts ached as they watched. It was really painful. She cried out. Why were they doing this to her? The disciple asked the girl's father if he wanted to continue the whipping. The father went to Mary's bedside with determination. He pressed his daughter gently. The girl kept wailing and wailing. The apostle took out a spell and placed it in front of the girl's belly. With the girl pleading, the disciple continued the ritual of exorcism. The wood struck Mary's body, but it hurt the father's heart. The disciple changed to a willow and continued the whipping. The girl was losing consciousness from the pain. The authorities arrived at the scene of the crash just as the archbishop was rescued by several people. There was a sudden explosion. Strangely enough, the religious was among them. He'd been unconscious for a long time. And here's Mary, smoked to death. If the family knew that this man is an evil spirit, what would happen? If the family knew that this man was an evil spirit, the disciples continued to beat Mary's body. The mother couldn't take it anymore. This is not an exorcism. It was an attempt to kill. She rushed forward to stop her brother's beatings. She looked to the father and said, "We won't do it anymore. Let's just let our family die a painful death." But the father was just as confused. The family, scared out of their wits, was scared and uncomfortable. The man pushed his wife away. He tells his brother to continue the beating. Suddenly, a voice reached the man's ears. "You're a coward. You've got the wrong man." The man seemed to understand something. Slowly, he got to his feet. He suddenly grabbed his wife by the neck. The brother gave an imperceptible smile. The child is terrified. The wife picks up a glass of water and smashes it over her husband's head. The man pushes his wife down and knocks her unconscious. He looks at his wife, who is dying in front of him. He seems to understand something else. He turns to his brother with an even more eerie smile. The man rushes towards the evil spirit and is knocked off his feet. Just as the evil spirit is about to kill the man, the real brother arrives just in time. A spell is recited, and the family is saved. A dying Mary slowly walks down to the storage room, looking at her father. "Why have you been beating me for so long?" she says. Meanwhile, the disciple took out the mirror. Mary finally reveals her true form. The brother had decided to take the evil spirit into his own body. He went to heaven with the evil spirits to be judged. his faith fell to the ground. This is the first time he has been separated from his faith. The impact of the ending is a little too uncomfortable. I choose not to continue with the story. My sheer force of will and faith. He succeeded in suppressing the community of evil spirits within him. This Korean exorcism film, both the filming and the use of emotion, is superb and daring. For those who are interested, you should give it a try.